Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be tackling a fascinating topic, just how accurate and reliable is the Bible. We've got some interesting excerpts from books all about the Bible.
Okay.
Some are written for folks who maybe already consider it, the good book.
Right.
And some written for people who are exploring it for the first time.
Yeah, interesting.
And our mission today is to really get into the evidence for the Bible's accuracy over time.
Okay.
And what that means for us, someone engaging with it.
Sounds like a rich topic. Important, too.
Yeah.
I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, so first things first.
Yeah.
How can we even talk about the accuracy of something as old as the Bible? We're talking about, ancient manuscripts, lost languages,
Right.
the whole bit, right?
You're hitting on a key point. Those original texts are mostly lost.
Okay.
Which is actually pretty normal for ancient writings.
Uh-huh.
Think of it like this. We don't have the first piece of parchment the gospel writers used.
Right.
And this is crucial.
Okay.
We have a ton copies.
Oh, wow.
Thousands, in fact. And that's where the whole field of textual criticism comes in.
Textual criticism, it sounds a bit intimidating. What exactly does that involve?
It's like a giant puzzle, really.
Okay.
Scholars compare all these copies looking for even tiny variations.
Wow.
And use that to piece together what they believe is closest to the original text.
Uh-huh.
It's meticulous work, but it gives us amazing insight into how these texts were transmitted over time.
So it's kind of like a giant game of telephone, but with really careful record keepers, making sure the message stayed intact.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And what's remarkable about the Bible is the sheer volume of these manuscripts.
Okay.
Compared to other ancient writings, we have way more copies dating back much closer to when they were first written.
Wow.
It's a historian's dream.
I'm starting to see how that's important. More copies, less time for errors.
Exactly.
Or changes to creep in.
Right.
But can you give me an example?
That's
like, I need some context for just how big of a deal this is.
Think about Aristotle.
Okay.
Brilliant philosopher. His work is still studied today.
Yeah.
But guess what?
What?
Our oldest surviving copy of his writings is from 1100 AD.
Okay.
Aristotle himself was writing around 340 BC.
Oh, wow.
That's a gap of almost 1,500 years.
Yeah.
And we only have a handful of copies to work with.
1,500 years. That's a huge gap.
It is.
It makes you wonder how much could have been lost or changed in translation over all that time.
Exactly. Now compare that to the New Testament.
Okay.
We have complete New Testament copies dating back to the 4th century AD.
Wow.
Just a few centuries after they were written.
Okay.
And we even have fragments, little pieces of papyrus from as early as the 2nd century.
So we're talking about a difference of hundreds of years?
Yep.
That seems significant.
It is.
It really highlights how quickly these texts were copied and spread throughout the ancient world.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that early spread speaks volumes about how important these texts were to people, even back then.
Okay.
One of the most intriguing examples is a fragment from the Gospel of John, dated to around 100 AD.
Wow.
Which is incredibly close to when it was likely written.
That is close. Okay, I see why the number of manuscripts and how early they are really matters in terms of accuracy.
For sure.
What else stands out in the evidence?
Well, we can't talk about this without mentioning the Dead Sea Scroll.
Oh, yeah.
Discovered in 1947, they contained Old Testament texts from the 3rd century BC.
Wow.
That discovery was a total game changer for biblical scholarship. Before that, the oldest Old Testament manuscripts we had were about 1,000 years younger.
1,000 years?
1,000 years.
That's mind-boggling. It's almost like getting a time machine.
It is.
And suddenly being able to look back clearly at a period we thought was lost to history.
Exactly. It dramatically reinforces how consistent the text has remained over such a long period. And it also tells us that copying wasn't limited to one place or language.
Right.
We have early translations in Latin, Coptic, Syriac. The Bible was being circulated far and wide, even in those early centuries.
That's incredible. Okay, so you've got all these manuscripts, early copies, different translations. It seems like there's a lot of evidence pointing to the reliability of the text over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's even more.
Oh.
We also find tons of quotes from the New Testament and other early writings.
Wow.
You could almost reconstruct significant portions of it just from those quotes.
Really?
It really highlights how widely read and referenced it was, even by those who weren't necessarily followers of its teachings.
So we've got mountains of manuscripts, early copies, translations, and even a whole network of quotes from other sources.
It's pretty amazing.
I have to admit, the evidence for the Bible's accuracy across time is pretty impressive.
It really is.
Okay.
Of course, it's important to remember that all of this speaks to the accuracy of the words themselves,
Okay.
the text as it was written.
Uh-huh.
Whether you believe those words are divinely inspired is a completely different question.
Right. That's a whole other discussion.
Exactly.
And faith is ultimately a personal choice.
Exactly. And one of the things I appreciate about our source material is how it handles this,
Yeah.
especially when talking about religious traditions.
Okay.
It takes a really thoughtful approach, acknowledging that some traditions can be meaningful while others might not be as helpful. It emphasizes being respectful of different experiences, especially if someone is just starting to explore Christianity.
That makes a lot of sense. Trying to force religious traditions on someone is probably not the most effective approach.
Right.
So what are some specific examples of traditions that our sources mention?
Well, there's this interesting concept called Corban.
Corban.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Which is discussed in one of our excerpts.
Okay.
It's a practice where people would dedicate money or possessions as a gift to God, often to avoid using those resources to care for their aging parents.
Wow, that's a pretty extreme example.
Yeah.
It really shows how even something intended for religious purposes can be twisted or misinterpreted.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of engaging with the text thoughtfully.
Yeah.
And not just blindly following tradition.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, manuscripts, translations, and even a bit about traditions and interpretations.
Right.
What else did our source material have to say about engaging with the Bible?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me was this concept of abiding in Christ's teachings.
Okay.
It draws on the Greek word menchao, which means to remain, to stay connected.
So it's not just about reading the words on the page,
Right.
but about letting them sink in, letting them shake your life.
Precisely. It's about that deeper level of engagement, going beyond the surface, beyond the historical facts.
Okay.
And really wrestling with what the text means for you personally.
That's a powerful concept. It brings us back to why we're even having this deep dive in the first place.
Yeah.
It's about exploring learning.
Right.
And ultimately deciding what this knowledge means for each of us as individuals. It's
Yeah.
not just about the history, it's about the human experience reflected in these texts.
You've hit the nail on the head. Even if someone doesn't approach the Bible from a place of faith, understanding its historical context and this incredible evidence for its accuracy really changes things.
Okay.
It opens up a whole new level of engagement with a text that has shaped civilizations for centuries.
I love that. Okay, so before we move on to the next part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should keep in mind from what we've discussed so far?
Well, first and foremost, the sheer volume of manuscripts and their closeness in time to the original writings give us a high degree of confidence that what we read today is a faithful representation of what was originally written. And secondly, while the evidence for textual accuracy is strong, the question of divine inspiration and personal interpretation remains open for each individual to explore.
That's a great summary. We've got a solid foundation for the rest of our conversation.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to digging into some of the more nuanced aspects of interpretation and how different people approach the Bible in our next segment.
Sounds good to me. Stay tuned, listener, because this deep dive is just getting started.
I'm excited.
Me too. Okay, we've explored all this amazing evidence for the Bible's accuracy across time.
Right.
But I have to ask, how do we account for all the different interpretations out there?
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many denominations and viewpoints within Christianity itself,
Right.
let alone across different religions.
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of why understanding the historical context of the Bible is so important.
Okay.
Remember, these texts were written in different times, in different places, and for different audiences.
Right.
And just like any writing, they've been interpreted through various cultural and historical lenses over the centuries.
So it's not like some kind of instruction manual where every verse has one clear universal meaning.
Not quite. It's definitely more nuanced than that.
Okay.
And that's where careful study, critical thinking,
Right.
and a healthy dose of open-mindedness come in.
Well, that sounds like a challenge. How does our source material approach navigating these sometimes tricky waters, especially when talking to someone who might be skeptical of organized religion or traditional interpretations?
That's what I found so fascinating.
Okay.
The source seems to encourage a sort of gentle exploration, for lack of a better term. It doesn't shy away from tough question or potential contradictions,
Right.
but it also emphasizes respect and understanding.
Okay.
It's less about pushing a specific agenda and more about inviting genuine dialogue.
That makes a lot of sense. Starting a conversation about faith with accusations or arguments probably isn't going to get you very far.
Exactly. And I think that's a valuable lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
Regardless of our personal beliefs, it's about being willing to listen, learn, and engage with different perspectives in a meaningful way.
So would you say the key here is approaching the Bible And really any text that deals with faith and belief with a good amount of humility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we all come to these discussions with our own unique experiences and perspectives is crucial. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
In fact, those diverse perspectives can actually enrich the conversation.
Right.
If we're open to hearing what others have to say.
This reminds me of the whole concept of abiding that we discussed earlier.
Yes.
It's not just passively absorbing information.
Right.
It's about actively wrestling with the text and its implications for our lives.
You got it. It's an ongoing journey of exploration and discovery.
Okay.
Not a destination we arrive at, with all the answers neatly packaged.
Right.
And honestly, I think that's part of what makes the Bible such a fascinating and enduring text.
Yeah.
There's always more to learn and uncover.
You know, as we're talking, I'm realizing that this conversation has really shifted my perspective.
Oh, wow.
I've always thought about the Bible primarily in terms of faith and belief, but now I'm seeing it through this whole other lens of history scholarship and the immense effort that went into preserving these texts over millennia.
What a fantastic insight.
Yeah.
It really underscores the fact that the Bible, regardless of one's personal beliefs, is a cornerstone of human history and culture.
Yeah.
Its impact is undeniable.
It really makes you think.
Yeah.
If people have dedicated their lives to preserving these words, studying them, debating them, translating them, there must be something there worth exploring, right?
There absolutely is.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It opens doors to new understanding, sparks curiosity, and invites us to grapple with big questions that have resonated with humanity for centuries.
Speaking of big questions, if we've established that the Bible is a text with remarkable accuracy, a text that's been meticulously preserved, what does that mean for how we should engage with it? And I don't mean just as scholars or historians. I mean as individuals seeking meaning, purpose. Or even a deeper understanding of the world around us.
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that goes beyond what we can answer through academic analysis alone. It's a question that ultimately calls for personal reflection and exploration.
I like that it leaves us with something to chew on.
Yeah.
Something to ponder as we continue our own individual journeys.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, isn't that what these deep dives are all about?
Yeah.
We're here to spark curiosity, expand understanding, and hopefully equip you to navigate the complexities of the world with a little more knowledge and a lot more open-mindedness.
That sounds like a great mission to me.
Yeah.
But you know what else I found fascinating in the source material?
Let's hear it.
It was this idea that some biblical stories and teachings seem to resonate across cultures and throughout history, regardless of religious beliefs.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
There's something about these ancient stories, the parables, the moral lessons, the struggles and triumphs, that speaks to something universal in the human experience.
That's exactly it. And this one source actually discussed a specific example. It talked about the story of the Good Samaritan. You know, the one where a man is robbed and left for dead?
Oh, yeah.
And it's the Samaritan, a member of a group often seen as outsiders, who stops to help him.
Oh, that's a great one. That story has been so influential.
Yeah.
Even beyond religious circles. It's a powerful call to compassion and empathy, reminding us to see the humanity in everyone. Even those we might consider different, or even our enemies.
And it really struck me that the source pointed out how this story has been used in all sorts of contexts. In literature, in ethical debates, even in discussions about social justice. It seems to transcend religious boundaries and speak to something deeper about our shared human experience.
That's what makes it such a timeless story.
Yeah.
It challenges us to confront our prejudices and to act with kindness and compassion, regardless of social norms or religious differences. It's a reminder that sometimes the most profound truths are found in the simplest of stories.
So where does this all leave us? We've explored the evidence for the Bible's accuracy. We've talked about the complexities of interpretation. And we've even touched on the idea that some of its stories and teachings have an incredible power to resonate across cultures and throughout history.
It's been quite a journey. And, you know, it's almost like we've been examining this intricate tapestry from afar, admiring its craftsmanship and detail. Now we're being invited to step closer, to run our fingers over the threads, to truly feel its texture and weight.
That's a beautiful analogy. It speaks to a level of intimacy,
Yeah.
of personal engagement that goes beyond just reading words on a page.
Exactly. And for me, that's what makes exploring the Bible so compelling.
Okay.
It challenges us to move beyond preconceived notions and easy answers.
Yeah.
It invites us to approach it with a sense of curiosity, humility, and a genuine willingness to grapple with its complexities.
It reminds me of what we were saying earlier about the source's emphasis on respect and understanding,
Right.
particularly when engaging with people who might hold different beliefs.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's not about winning arguments or proving points.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the profound influence this text has had on human history and culture.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging its power to inspire challenge and comfort countless individuals across time.
And maybe it's also about acknowledging that even if we don't personally subscribe to every belief or interpretation, there's still wisdom and insight to be gleaned from these ancient stories, these moral teachings, these glimpses into the human condition that have resonated across centuries.
Beautifully said. Because the Bible, at its core,
Yeah.
is a reflection of the human experience. Our joys, our struggles,
Right.
our search for meaning and purpose. And those are things we can all connect with, regardless of our background or beliefs.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think we're left with more than just facts and figures
Right.
about manuscript evidence and textual accuracy.
Right.
We're left with a challenge, an invitation to engage with the Bible on a deeper level,
Okay.
to wrestle with its complexities,
Yeah.
and to discover what it might hold for each of us individually.
I couldn't agree more. And perhaps that's the most profound takeaway of all.
Yeah.
That this ancient text, even with its layers of interpretation and historical context,
Right.
still has the power to speak to us today. It sparks our curiosity, challenges our assumptions,
Yeah.
and invites us into a conversation that's been unfolding for millennia.
And on that note, dear listener, we leave you with this knowing that the Bible has been so carefully preserved and passed down through generations. What will you do with that knowledge?
That's the question.
How will you choose to engage with this ancient text that continues to shape our world? Until next time, keep diving deep.